All right. 2024, it's a new year. Back with Shoptalk, all things landlording. Welcome to the Alberta landlord community. I'm your host, MacKenzie Wilson. Alongside me, I've got Edmonton Eviction Services eviction expert and owner, Don Gray. Don, how are you doing today? Staying warm?
Fantastic. It's a beautiful day.
It is. It's chilly. I think right now, I'm not sure where it's up in Edmonton, but I think we're about minus 15, minus 20 right now in Calgary.
Yeah, probably closer to minus, what is it? Oh, minus 23, it says.
Yeah. Today's gonna be a good show. We've got some points lined up. I've grabbed about 3 or 4 popular posts around dealing with tenant disputes and neighbors. We've got a unauthorized person that's not willing to identify themselves on a property, and the last situation I'm going to talk about as well today is minimizing vacancy and rent loss between tenancies. So you've got a tenancy ending on this month, and the following month you've already got a tenant lined up. Let's kind of dive into the details of logistics to do that process smoothly, so you don't miss on a month's rent or have to take a prorated rent amount. Awesome, and we've got Michelle Slem, and we've got Christina Repska watching and tuned in. So thanks you two for joining us. Fantastic, that's awesome. And while we wait for people to kind of get hopped on, Don, my favorite question to ask always when I get one of my eviction experts on is, what is the current wait time from the day of filing and get your putting your filing in to the day you get your phone hearing?
It's right now between 12 and 14 days. Yeah, unless there's a weekend and an extra weekend in there, there might be like a couple extra days. But usually within 14 days, we're in the hearing.
Oh, that's amazing. So 2 weeks, give or take, likely on the shorter side. So that is a testament to Service Alberta. That's great to hear. Nice and quick. Fantastic. And folks, if you got questions, throw them in the chat. We love to take questions live and really help people. I mean, that's the whole point of the show. Landlords helping landlords. And I'm excited. It's been a bit. I think we did one late last year, kind of one off, but last year was kind of a break. And Don, I'm glad you've been bugging me to get the Shoptalk back up and going. It's a good practice to have these conversations and learn and share those lessons learned. So I've got some notes in front of me. I'm not sure if there's anything else that comes to mind. If not, we can jump into one of the examples I've got lined up. Okay,
I'm ready to go.
Nod of approval. Let's do it. All right, so let's pop up the screen here. No technical issues, which is great. I hope you guys can read this. I can make it a little bit bigger as well. Must be getting old. I do feel blind these days. I wish I didn't have this whole like admin thing, but that's fine. Nonetheless, okay. So Caroline posted a really good question. I was kind of going through yesterday and had kind of created a bit of conversation in the community. So let's kind of define this a bit further. So the situation that Caroline's referring to is a landlord goes to the property to do an inspection. When they get to the property and start the inspection, the person that answers the door, they don't know who they are. They have an unknown person, and this person's not willing to, show their identity or confirm their identity through means of a driver's license or other government issued ID. So what do we do in this situation? Don, so I think we'll work through this situation from a few different angles because there is still a lot of unknowns. We can speak from if you've had some ongoing issues, and this is perhaps another feather in the hat of a challenging tenancy and what you can do from there. Or if this is the first kind of stumbling or roadblock you've come up with this tenancy, how do you address it properly and protect yourself as a landlord? So, Don, I'm going to throw it to you. In this situation, if there is other issues at play, let's say we have some late rent, perhaps noise complaints or damages, and now you have an unauthorized person that you don't know, or how would you even address the situation if this is the first time you've walked into this and maybe we don't have history? What would you be looking for?
Well, I'd be looking to certainly question who they are. You have that right. If they're not willing to tell you anything, their name or how they're involved, are they living there, or are they just doing this to be nice to their friend or something? They're not willing to share anything. They just want to walk with you. Then when you do your walk around, then look for items that maybe show that there's an unauthorized tenant there, because that's where the worry is, that somebody's here. Are they living there? Are they an unauthorized tenant, causing more wear and tear? And if you're paying for the utilities, that's a big cost there. So look for, and I've had these type of situations before. Look for extra beds in a room that weren't there before. Is there clothes in the clothes closet in an office or in a room that there wasn't before?
Yep, right.
Look at how many shoes there are lined up. They're different sizes, and there's four sets of shoes there that look the size of the person that's at the door. Just look at those things as you go through, and that would tell you then. It should tell you or give you a clue if they're living there or not. I mean, that's and then what do you want to do about it? So if you say there's nothing else, and everything is good, they're paying the rent on time, the place is nice and clean, that sort of thing, then if you want to do an investigation, but you're going to keep it low key. If you're going in there because there's been troubles and you're trying to keep an eye on things, and maybe the place is dirty, messy, crowded, you still look for the same things, but you're paying closer attention now, and you look to get evidence, and that's where, if you want to use that as a way of evicting somebody, then you have to have evidence of it. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they live there.
For sure.
Yeah, so you got to gather evidence, and that as you go, take lots of pictures. You're allowed to take pictures, definitely. Some people get all wound up, but if they got an 84-inch surround sound unit in their front room, well, don't take pictures of all that.
So it sounds like, Don, going down the road, if there's no prior issues going on, everything's in good order, and this is a unexpected surprise, ask some questions, feel them out, try to see why they're there. There's probably a bit of a benefit of the doubt. I know when I go for my periodic inspections, I do about 2 a year. I like to do spring and fall. Usually spring is good because if anything that's gotten frozen over the winter, that's kind of the time of year to catch them when things are starting to defrost. And then in the fall, same thing. You're getting your property prepped and ready before the deep freeze comes in with winter that we're in right now. But I usually have always arranged with my tenants. They know I'm coming. There's no surprises. I'm not trying to catch them off guard. I just, hey, like I've got to do maintenance. I know when I make myself available, tenants sometimes don't want to be a pain or disturb you. I find I get more problems brought to my attention. I could be proactive and resolve them before they fester into an expensive repair. But so life happens. Say the tenant had to run out to an emergency and couldn't be there, and maybe they've gotten this person to help them out. But usually, in my case, I just have the tenants just message me, and I would just simply reschedule. My concern in this situation is why would someone not reveal their identity? What is there to hide? And that just kind of picks on the spidey sense of, okay, something else is going on. Which, Don, I think you brought up some really good tips. Is going through, doing the inspection, take notes of such those additional shoes or a luggage bag, or evidence that there's a new person living at the property that otherwise wasn't there. I think probably being proactive in the communication right after this inspection is setting out. I mean, and I would communicate this on all mediums, whether it's verbally, or a phone call, a text message, and then follow up with an email in writing saying, sorry, John or Jan, too bad I couldn't see you at the inspection today. The property looks great, or here's a list of 3 or 4 things we're going to fix. And then the last part of the email, by the way, so and so answered the door. They weren't willing to share the identity, which just has me slightly concerned. I want to make sure, put your spin on it or run it through Chat GBT. But this is in breach of, and quote the legislation at play. So Don, I know you've done with a number of evictions around unauthorized individuals, and you were saying when we're chatting off there that usually there's other issues at play too, that you're a victim of more than one breach. Can you just kind of walk me through one of those scenarios, and perhaps if you got any suggestions or tips to deal with unauthorized people?
Oh, certainly. First off, where it fits in the act is under Section 21B, interfering in the rights of the landlord and other tenants. Yeah, I've had lots of those. We did one just recently, I'm going to say within the last 4 or 5 months, where the tenants had a large problem with items in their place. So they had the outside fully filled with junk, and the landlord couldn't get inside to see what was like inside. But they did find out that there was a couple of unauthorized people there. So when we took it to court, we had evidence. We had pictures of these people. We had them had some, not only but the people, but all the mess outside at least. And so what that did is it added more weight to the fact that we wanted possession of it quickly. Okay. And we ended up getting it because we did have evidence of all these different breaches, including a unauthorized tenant. If you go just for that, if it's nothing else, everything else is good, it would be difficult. You'd have to have some evidence as to why this person is there and what they're causing a problem. If there's noise complaints from the neighbors, this guy's having parties, he's running around naked outside, stuff, oddball stuff that they have, people have pictures of, or have called the police and they got a police number, then, you have enough evidence to convince a adjudicator that there's somebody in there that shouldn't be in there, and they're causing problems not only for the landlord but for the neighbors.
That's a good point, Don.
Yeah.
So I mean, to kind of highlight, if you're trying to evict solely on an unauthorized guest, unless you can showcase and put evidence together of a serious problem that this individual is causing you, breach of landlord's rights to access the property, you don't have a lot to stand on, and it probably won't go well in front of RTRS to get an eviction.
Yeah.
If that's what you're going for. So in that case, it sounds like you're probably better off to prep and start doing your documentation and kind of watch if there's other breaches at play. So.
Well, certainly, and often it happens with single people who bring a boyfriend or girlfriend in, and it starts moving. You don't tell the landlord, and this person's a slob or a tough guy, and gets angry and punches a hole in the wall, and starts causing damages or screams at the neighbors, and that's the kind of thing. And we get run a lot of those, and so that's and I had a number of times when the adjudicator said, Well, it looks like the problem's with this guy, not with the tenant. So then
Yeah. Why would I?
kind of banned the guy or legislated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense. Yeah. Why would I evict the tenant when it's the issue is not related to this individual? So I've been in this situation.
well, it is. It still is.
Yeah, the person that so I had exactly that scenario. I had rented to a single person. They got a common law or spouse or person there. I had a great track record with the original person. I let them bring on their common partner. I can't remember. I don't think I put them on lease, but I put them on as a what is it, an authorized occupant. And anyways, I would have never ever rented this individual by themselves. If they were on their own merit, I wouldn't even touch them with a 10-foot pole. It was just, there's trouble. And sure enough, this individual ended up robbing a convenience store and stole a bunch of like scratch and win tickets and whatever. Just not the smartest move. And I had both RCMP and police come to my property. And this happened to be the exact same day, because this is a suite of property up and down, that I had a tenant moving in downstairs. She was literally carrying boxes into her brand like the day of moving in. And so this person, the police come to the door to arrest this individual. They decide that it's wise to run through the house, jump out a side window out of the bathroom, sends the cops running on the property to chase this individual. And my new tenant moving in comes up the stairs and has a police officer pointing a pistol at her face. And anyways, so how I dealt with the situation, this was one of them. Yeah, this was a while ago. This was when I knew a little less things than I know now, being a landlord. I just, what would be the right word? I just told them they had to leave. I negotiated. It's like, hey, like, listen, put yourself in the position of this new tenant move in. You've got a kid. You know, what if you were in this position? How would you feel? Would you feel safe? And I got them to say, well, and if I was in that position, I wouldn't feel safe. And then that's why I'm asking you guys to leave. I told the original tenant, like my original tenant, like, you can stay, but your partner can't. And they made a decision that they're going to move out together. So I said, so be it. And I gave them some time. But yeah, that's tricky. So from a legal perspective, Don, there's not really, unless there's other issues at play that can build up other breaches to build a case solely on the fact of someone being unauthorized, it's pretty difficult to make that a case for an eviction, unless, like you mentioned before, you can show proof of it, and help me word this, Don, being like, if you can show proof of a substantial breach that's affecting your rights as a landlord, or perhaps the rights and enjoyment of fellow tenants, if it's in a multifamily building.
Yeah, you're hitting it on the head. Certainly, you can, if they're unauthorized, and your lease says no unauthorized tenants without prior approval, and there's no approval made, then yeah, that is grounds. But you could get a what we call a Cinderella, not a Cinderella order, but an order that says the tenant can stay, providing that there's no more problems and that this person leaves.
Oh, like a conditional order.
Yeah, keep the peace clause type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we revisit it back in a couple of weeks or something. Depends on the adjudicator you get. There's some that would say, no, that's never going to work. We'll just toss them out, everybody out. And then the other end of the spectrum, of course, is you get somebody, well, they meant to tell you, they didn't tell you, but that's not so bad, it's all right, or this and that, and so these soft sell. We don't get too many of those. There's only a couple adjudicators that are kind of liberal that way.
Okay, so
most are in the middle.
Fair. So as a new landlord, my mind would be thinking to, okay, I've got a new occupant in my property. probably for sure increase tear and wear on the property. There's more people using it, but probably the most direct line is an increase in cost utilities, more showers, more of all that stuff. Do I have any recourse as a landlord, Don?
No, you could, depending on what kind of lease you've got. If you got a fixed term, which is the one I always recommend, it would you'd be hooped until the end of the fixed term. If you had a month-to-month periodic tenancy, then you can negotiate something that would happen, 3 months down the road. That'd be considered a rental increase.
Could I? So here's a question, Don, and this is me being planning ahead. Can I tier the? Okay, so I mean, I flat rate my utilities, but I have a separate agreement, which is another ball of wax. I won't get into that because I've basically removed my utilities from my lease, and the lease is governed under the RTA. If I have my utilities in my lease as a flat rate, can I tier it saying your utilities are X amount every month if one person's in the property? If two people in the property, it's now this amount every month, and so on up to whatever size is reasonable for that property. And so let's say it's a single person around the property. They're paying, just for simple numbers, $1,000 a month, all in. And then let's say they get a partner halfway through in month 6, and now my lease says, okay, now it's $1,100 a month or $1,050. Is that considered a rent increase, or since that's structured from the beginning?
If it's in a fixed term, that would be considered a rental increase, and you couldn't do it until after the term. But on a periodic month to month, then you would have to give 3 months notice that you're doing that.
Okay.
Even though it's in there, even though it's in the lease, and that would be a good way of putting it. It's in the lease. You'd still have to give 3 months.
Okay.
Legally,
you can't do that. You can't contract your way out of the law. And if there's a conflict between your lease and the RTA shall prevail. I'm going to ask some of our people watching a quick 1-sentence answer why a fixed term lease is better than a month-to-month for anyone that doesn't know the answer. While they are pondering and typing that into the chat, I'm going to go on to our next situation that I kind of queued up. Let's get into it. Okay, so Bonnie's got a question here, and I this is actually a really good question because there's actually a lot of nuance to this. It's logistics. She's trying to keep the revenue up and her costs down. Not a lot of wiggle room right now. So the question is around ending a tenancy and starting a new tenancy, and minimizing vacancy and ensuring that you go from collecting rent on the end of the first lease and collecting rent on the next month from the new lease without missing any rent over a period of time, a month, or prorating it. What are some tips and tricks around doing that?
Well, that's certainly an ideal situation. If you can do that, then you don't have any lost time, which is very difficult in this business. You'd certainly have to be in tune with the first tenant. You'd want to be on a fixed term leases, so you know when the ending's going to be, and communicate with them. Make sure that they understand that you got somebody coming. You'll have to let the new tenant know that they're going to be stepping in right after somebody else. The dangers, of course, are are you going to leave it clean? It's going to be rent ready for the next person. And if you got good tenants, I know landlords have done that for years, and they were able to pull it off every month. I've known lots of tenants, lots of landlords that didn't make it, and the previous tenant going out didn't move, and they ended up putting the new tenant into a hotel for a few days while we sorted things out. So there's that's a walk on the razor edge, that is. But lots of communication. If you can convince them to leave a couple days earlier, and then you can patch some holes and freshen things up a little bit or whatever you need to do. Then that's great.
Yeah, let's talk a few different situations
If you,
there,
yeah,
Don.
yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So, assuming the property is in rent-ready condition, my personal track record of tenants leaving a property clean enough for the next tenants to move in is I've had 2 tenants that actually were very diligent in their cleaning. I find because essentially there's an expectation that it should be clean as like a nice hotel room. I'm sure that word is probably subjective too, but it should be clean. And I just when they move in, it's one thing, but when they move out, it's just and they're busy, they're trying to pack and stuff. I've almost found I have to do some sort of additional cleaning. So a couple things I've done is I end my fixed terms not on the last month, not the very end of the month. I actually pad I try to get 2 business days in there, depending on when that month ends and what day it falls on in the week. So it might be 4 if you include the weekend. Just a bit of a grace period to be able to get a cleaner in, a quick maintenance trade to do some fixes, whatever you might be. And then I'm actually reading and I'm not sharing my screen. Shame on me. Add to share. Okay, sorry. Let me do this part too. And one thing I noticed here, Don, and I know you're really good at this. I wanted to catch this. So, part of the strategy that Bonnie's employing here is I'm asking the prospective tenant to put a non-refundable hold deposit on the unit with a receipt given. Now, what might they be getting into trouble with the use of deposit and non-refundable? So there's a difference when you collect, and Don, where I'm leading with this question is, what's the difference of collecting a security deposit up front versus collecting first month's rent or hold against first month's rent? If you collect a security deposit and that person backs out, are you obligated to return those funds?
Well, you could be, yes. Certainly, if it's towards rent and they didn't move in, then you've lost rent for that month.
Yeah. So the wording, the devil's in the details here. The wording's quite important. That you word it as a deposit or no? It's a I should know this because I say it all the time. It's a actually I think it's a deposit or no, it's a hold or you collect monies against first month's rent. And you don't use the word deposit because the definition of a deposit, it means it's a refundable amount of money. So don't use that word because that can get you in trouble with RTRS. I think the other things too here to kind of manage the logistics smoothly is, like you said, Don, I think it's a really good point, having great communication with your existing tenant. I would pre-book my viewing windows ahead of time. So then that gives the existing tenant kind of peace of mind and comfort that they're not going to be interrupted every other day with people coming in and they have to either vacate the property, which most people are really good about that. They don't legally have to leave the property, but most will respect and do that. But if you pre-book windows, maybe it might be Tuesday and Thursday between 7 and 9 p.m. and Saturdays from 1 to 3 p.m. or something like that, whatever works best. They already know those are the windows. And then when you book all your viewings, I call it like tea time bookings. I stagger them 10 about 10 minutes apart. And a couple things happen here is I like to have one-on-one viewings. Now, this isn't always possible depending on the amount of demand you're getting for your property. And we've been, especially over this last year, and it's been a long time. It's been a while since we've been in this high demand environment where we've got a ton of interest with low vacancy. But if you can book these viewings back to back. And then the second part of that play is your tenants will see firsthand other interested parties leaving and coming in the property. So then it's not just your words saying, oh yeah, I've had lots of interest. They're seeing it firsthand. And then that typically will drive getting completed applications a lot sooner into your inbox. But there's a point to that as well. Anyways, queue them up. get your viewings done in these windows back to back. Save your time when you're driving down, so you're not driving just for one odd viewing here and there. And I, in this case too, to do it, you want to be trying to rent and start advertising as early as possible. I typically try to approach tenants in that third month prior to the end of a fixed term to make a decision, and then I'm listing in that second month to those last 8 weeks. And hopefully I've had properties where I've done 2 sets of viewings and I've had it rented out 2 months before the lease is even ended, and then the current tenant's happy because they're not getting disturbed. I know I rambled on quite a bit there, Don, but kind of anything to add to that?
Well, yes, those are all good things. When we talk about rent and damage deposit or security deposit, which is the same thing in Alberta, there's another hitch to it. When you have a tenant that tends to not pay the rent, often they want to hold off on the security deposit. They say, "Oh, I'll give you $50 a month for the year, or I'll give you $500 now and $500 in 2 weeks," or that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you get to a point where you want to get rid of these people and they haven't paid anything to the security deposit or very little, then you're behind the 8 ball in that you don't have any reserve to cover damages. Often when the people are like that, and I don't want to stereotype, I'm going to say often people are in that situation aren't the cleanest, aren't the gentlest people on as tenants. So you end up with a double whammy, damages and no money to pay for it.
Yeah.
So that's the saw off. So it's
Yeah, and to that point too, Don.
I think probably the best thing to do.
Oh, sorry, I talked over
Okay,
you.
I was going to say the best thing to do would be to take that deposit towards rent, and then when when everything's worked out, you can say, "Well, I'm going to put that money in the security deposit. Your first month's rent is due on this day or something." Give them a little break, or a couple of days or something. That way you've got your security deposit in the bank.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I got 2 things have come to my mind here. So one, something that you raised, which I think is a really good point, a good pro tip here, Don, is if someone wants to pay their security deposit in installments, to me that's a red flag. That's bad.
Yep.
If they can't manage their cash flow enough to pay a deposit in full, a security deposit in full, they're going to be so cash strapped. You're going to have issues collecting rent and all the rest that along that comes with it. And there's usually, like you alluded to, Don, probably more challenges you're going to have to deal with. The other thing too, once they move in and take possession, and if you haven't collected damage deposit, you're SOL. There's no legal grounds to go after the deposit after the fact. They don't have to pay it to you.
Right.
So it's so critical before you give possession, before you physically give the keys, you've done your inspections. I make sure, depending on the type of property, whether if it's a suite property where I've got one utility meter for both units, I keep that on my name. So then I do that a bit differently with the utility agreement. But if it's like a condo where there's only one unit and one set of utilities, I want proof that the utilities are in NMAX or EPCO or whoever the provider is. I want to see that. I have a whole list of things I go through, and if they don't check off all those boxes, they're not getting the keys. Like that's the onus on them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to that part is not. I don't want a check in hand. I want funds deposited in the account because checks bounce.
Mm-hmm.
E-transfers can be canceled if you don't accept the password. The money has to be in your account before you give possession over. That's so critical. Cool. Yeah. I know we kind of rambled. We threw a bunch of tips in there, but I think Bonnie's kind of on the right track. I know this is such a challenge all the time. Like I said, I do shorten the last month on my leases by a few days to build a buffer of 2 to 4 days before, because typically by default in Alberta with the RTA, possession is noon of the last day of the last month, of giving it back to the landlord, and then the next tenancy usually starts on noon of the first day of the following month. That literally gives you, if no one's late, 24 hours to turn over a property, which depending on the size of the property and what you have to do is not a lot of time at all. And then you're going to be in the position where you're doing prorated rent because the new tenant can't move in, or I've had to, in one case, that my existing tenants took way longer to move out. They overstayed by 2 days and they didn't get the property clean. So I deducted from their damage deposit, and the exact amount became a credit to the new tenant. I did not make any money in that situation other than just ensuring that one tenant was made whole because of, table being moved up there. Yeah, ensuring the tenant's being made whole and moved in. So anyways, I digress. Any other points to wrap up on that topic, Don?
Well, make sure if you do something like that, something creative, make sure you have it written and add it to the lease and signed off. So otherwise you can say, no, I never heard that before. Darn landlord, he made that up.
Right. Well, so let's go back. So we're gonna just kind of pivot back to the previous topic on utilities there. And so Christine asked this question. I think this is really cool. So can you charge X amount for utilities and give them a discount if only one person? So if I'm reading what Christine is kind of playing out here is, let's say I put in the lease, utilities are $400 a month, or that might be a lot for one person. So let's say it's 250, 300. Let's say it's $300. And then I say is in, say, an email or something, okay, so you've signed a lease and you've committed to $300 a month, but as a, call it whatever promotion you want, good standing, or because you're only one person, you can get a discount of $50 every month and only pay $250. But if you have someone move in halfway through, or I wouldn't even open that conversation, but you're putting yourself in that position where if something changes, then you can go back to what's contracted in the lease. Or Don, are we kind of running amok here because we have a track record of paying a lower amount for utilities through e-transfers, but the lease says something else? How will that hold up, or what does that look like at RTDRS?
RTDRS would take the lower amount. I see that lots of times in the rent where there's an incentive. The rent is $1,200, but if you pay on time, it's $1,100. And so they didn't pay on time, the rent's still $1,100. I think the solution is to, or in my mind anyway, the solution is to charge the actual amount of utilities. And my up and downs, have it in my name, and they agreed to the split and start with. Usually like 60-40.
Yeah.
And then I send the invoice, the full invoice, and then it's marked right on there: upstairs 60%, downstairs 40%, X number of dollars each one. And it's due 5 days after we email it to them. And that works good. I've had 2 or 3 that, kind of said, oh, I haven't, my money didn't come. I got the rent, but I don't have all the utilities. And, I let it run a little bit. And then I took them to court. And I got a discount because I do it myself. But yeah, we won on that. And they had to leave. They were very, very upset. They paid me, though. I was quite surprised. I didn't think I'd get paid from that one.
Oh, okay. So Don, if I understand that situation, you've structured where
that there's no bid.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I'm going to say there's nothing ambiguous about it. It's the exact amount, and if you got an extra person, then the other side is going to say, hey, there's an extra person there now, and I'm paying part for what they're using, and so that's going to give me a clue that there's an unauthorized person there. You can adjust the percentage. If you agree, and there's the upstairs has got an extra person, And so instead of downstairs paying 40, they'll maybe pay 35, whatever
Right.
it's agreed
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
You do an amendment to the lease, and while that person's in there, this is the amount.
Okay. Okay,
Percentage.
this is interesting, Don. So I have some questions for you. So
That's something you could do,
yeah,
but you amend the lease.
So obviously you can change a lease if all parties agree to do it. So I mean, I think that's just so that everyone knows, and that's what you're doing there, Don. Okay. So what even it being a fixed term, one, I'm lazy. Well, I'm not lazy. I'm efficient. That's probably the better way to call it. I'd rather not have to email utility bills every month. But one thing that you raised my eyebrow there, Don, I think was kind of very slick and devil in the details is you've created a mechanism by doing this way, this utility splitting, to learn if there's unauthorized guests. By the neighboring tenant will be very quick to say, "Hey, I'm overpaying." They're motivated to let you know. So that's interesting. I'm gonna have to think on that because I didn't think of doing it that way. I just don't want to have to email a bill every month. That part's kind of annoying. So Don, in that case, you collect month rent on the first.
I have an assistant, and I have do it for me. So.
Oh, fair enough. I'm not quite there yet. So, so you collect rent on the first as one transaction, and then utilities are just handled separately throughout the month and another period of time. Okay. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. All right, we've digressed. We're kind of rambling on.
It's pretty good for me, anyway.
Yeah, that's good. If there's any questions, throw them in the comments. Like they kind of dig in.
Another question here?
Yeah, well, nothing live yet. Take a little time.
Do we get any answers on why?
Go ahead.
Do we get any answers on your question about which is better, a fixed term or periodic?
No, people are. It's a little.
You throwing that out. Nobody answered.
Not yet. Yeah, no one answered yet. So, I'll keep building up getting the people back on the show here. But anyway, nonetheless, so let's hop on. So Mark, here's Mark. Yeah. He's a longtime member of the community, and this is his first post. So he's got a halfplex, which I'm assuming is like half of a duplex, that he rents out. So he's got tenants in half of a duplex. The other side of the duplex, I'm assuming they're renters. So this is a tenant neighbor dispute, and these are really, really, really tricky. And there's a lot. I think there's some best practices you can kind of employ, but ultimately there's a lot of very depends on the situation at hand. But anyways, let's work through Mark's problem because I find it interesting. So last summer, his tenants were approached by the neighbors, and the neighbors asked if they could park in front of the property because they have a child and makes their life easier, whatever it might be. Mark's tenants happily agreed; they had no problem with that. I believe in that conversation as well, the Mark's tenants asked if the neighbors could pick up some of the kids' toys and kind of keep the lawn and yard in tidy order. It wasn't received well, and the neighbors were insulted that their belongings were perhaps called trash. I don't know the details, but that started the challenging friction between these two parties. Okay, now we've just come out of a polar vortex here in Alberta. Last week we've had temperatures. I think Edmonton, I heard, was up to minus 46.7 or something crazy last week.
54.
Yeah, that's insane. So obviously, the tenants need to build a park close enough to the property they can plug in their vehicle. It makes sense because no one can start their vehicles in this cold temperature. So the neighbors are not being very cooperative. They're being not good choice of words. They're being they're being abrasive. We'll put it lightly that way. So how can we help Mark in this situation? So ultimately, a couple of things at play, and the community did a great job of chipping in here. There's 22 comments. I'll cover the obvious stuff, and then I'm going to throw at you, Don, to kind of add your wisdom in. We already know that parking on public streets, public property. There's no rights. It's first come, first serve. But that doesn't really help anything in this situation. And there were some notes exchanged. So the Mark's tenants, the party that he's helping out here, wrote a friendly letter asking if they could get close enough to plug in their vehicle, and they got a very profanity written response from the neighbors. So what can, I mean, obviously you don't want you want these issues to resolve on their own, or ideally let the two parties communicate. But, sometimes communication breaks down, and you have to jump in a little bit to kind of keep the peace, so to speak. So what are your initial thoughts here, Don, as you see the situation, and what would be your suggestions for Mark?
Well, certainly as a landlord of my own units, and being having a property management company for quite a few years, we had a lot of units. I made a policy of not getting involved in those things. Now, at least not directly. I wouldn't go down and confront the guy next door. The guy next door is a jerk. There's no doubt about it. Certainly, as we discussed before the show a bit, I would certainly get a hold of the landlord on the other side. If that guy is actually the owner of that half of the duplex, then got a problem. Certainly, if this guy is being aggressive, the next door neighbor is aggressive to our guy, then that's something I would say, let's call the police and get the police involved in this. I try to keep hands off as much as possible, because it's not my fight. I'm renting the unit out to them. They've got themselves involved in a problem with somebody that's out of my jurisdiction.
Yeah,
I'm not looking after that unit next to me, so there's not much I can do other than mourning the landlord. And if they're open to it, so yeah, that's then if it gets worse, then I would certainly involve the police, have them involve the police. I know I would listen to my tenant, and I would tell him why I'm not involved in this, and so then it's going to be the tenant. I'm going to back the tenant, but I'm not going to fight for him in this case. Now, if it's an upstairs, downstairs, and they're having a fight like that, that's a little bit different. I still try to stay away from those, but if it gets too hairy, then there's a good chance of some damages happening, and then I get in, and often in those cases I evict both upstairs and downstairs. So just clean the house here, super clean.
Yeah, and
start
Don,
over.
your comments there. Oh, sorry, you're cutting in and out, but I caught a lot what you said there, Don. Your comments really echo well what the community said at large. You support your tenant where you can. Perhaps police, or maybe the first step might be bylaw officers if there's something else at play. And you actually went down. The only active thing I would do in this situation is reach out, assuming the neighbors are renters as well. I would reach out to that landlord and again try to bridge some medium. But like you said, and this is what the community said at large, I'm just flipping through the comments right now, is they're adults, they're up to them to figure out the issues. We can't, and we don't really have a lot of power coming in as a third party to mediate anything. So reading through what people might be asking me, okay, great, MacKenzie, I'll try reaching over to the owner next door, the landlord. How do I do that? How would I ever figure that out? Well, my suggestion is pull title. Service Alberta has a website called Spin2. I think it costs $10. You can pull title and see who the owner is. And I'd say the vast majority of titles out there are owned personally. So you'll get a name and a mailing address of that individual. and start the communication and see if we can find some mediation. And if that doesn't work, then like you said, Don, use the legal routes through bylaw and police. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
We're all nodding.
Yeah.
We're all
Got to be careful where you stick your nose.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really I think the devil's in the details of Don, and you really put that well, is you support your tenant and you help them out where you can. Like, you just don't ignore the problem, but you don't walk in and take it on face to face. That just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't work that way.
No.
No. Yeah.
No, you're not going to win. You have no chance of winning.
Yeah. Oh, we got a utility question in from what, Rick? Hey, Rick, thanks for hopping on the show here. I'm going to throw you up here. How do you handle utilities between tenants? EPCOR gives me such a headache. So let's paint two scenarios, and I'll let Don take this. Let's talk from well, between tenants. I'm going to already assume that this property is probably suited with, you've got 2 rental units off of 1 meter or set of utilities. I have my solution, and actually, Don, you already answered this question talking about how you take the utility bill every month, you mail it out or email it with the split, and then the tenants have to pay in a separate e-transfer within 5 days of receiving that email. And I like that, actually. That's
exactly right.
A little extra administrative work. Honestly, not a lot. It's just probably being a little bit more diligent and putting a reminder in your calendar. You know, and I might switch that, Don, actually, now that I think about it. I don't know. I'll have to think that one through. What I have done, for better or worse, and I have to see if I haven't gone to court, so that's the kicker here, is how it's going to be interpreted. And maybe, Don, you can give me some insight. I've done, so same situation. I've got a single family home. It's got a unit upstairs and a basement suite. It's legally suited. So 2 rental units off of 1 set of utilities. I've pulled my utilities out of my lease, so my utilities are no longer governed or legislated under the RTA. For better or worse here, because this is to be determined how I have to resolve this, if I have to go through dispute resolution service or civil court or wherever the mediation might be. But I have a separate contract, and my contract, it's flat rate. I basically average out the rent or the utilities over a year. I add a budget of like 10, 12, or 14% in there. Try to, because I know right now utilities are going up, depending on if your what do you call it? If your rates are changing and you don't have them locked in. So anyways, whatever. But I have a clause they sign off saying, because I want to keep that motivation, that be like, if you leave things plugged in and turned on and running the heat up and you drive the cost of utilities up, you're going to get billed. I want to keep that motivation in play for the tenants to turn off stuff and keep the cost down. So what I say is, if there is I give them an option. If I see that the rents or the utilities unusually spike high, you can define it as 10% above average, 15, whatever the number might be. I will give you a 30-day notice, and I'm either going to increase the average rent or average cost of utilities per month, or you can do a one-time lump sum payment or a special assessment, if you will, and pay that difference and then keep on track. So I try to structure it in a way where the tenants are motivated to keep their costs down as if they own the property. So now the con or the caveat to how I've done it is I haven't gone through RTRS. I haven't had need to do a hearing. I don't know how that would hold up, or I'm not protected by the RTA. If my tenant stops paying rent, I probably have to go through another remediation or legal process to collect on those arrears. Thoughts on that, Don, on what I've done? Have I shot myself in the foot, or am I doing something amazing?
Well, I think you understand what kind of trouble you made yourself, and that's you'll have to, you can do it on an eviction. If you had all you include that contract in with the lease. I'm just thinking out loud here. In with the lease, and you provided all the utility bills, and they added up to be more than what was paid. I think that's my phone that the cat back down somewhere. It'll quit. Anyway, yeah. So it's possible to collect that. I had one where it was an acreage, and they rented out, and they had a flat rate for the utilities. There was a gas co-op and what have you there. Anyway, they had a flat rate, and then these guys just went to town. I don't know what they were doing, growing dope or what, but the bills like tripled. I think it was like normal bill was around $600 or $700 for this acreage, and it went up over $2,000. I think there was 1 month it was $4,000. Anyway, we as part of the, I mean, there was other things involved. They were bringing all kinds of stolen goods and stuff in, but we went after that money, and we got it because we had all the invoices, and it said in the contract that there's a flat rate in the lease, the flat rate of whatever it was, $600 or $700, and we had all the bills, and it took some talking, and I had we ended up getting a judgment for it. I don't know if the owner ever got any money, but we certainly got the judgment, and then it was a pretty hefty one, because they were missing rent and what have you, and I'm thinking it was probably in the $15,000 or $18,000 range, maybe more. Yeah.
Okay, so Don, you're kind of breaking up a bit.
And
so
we got that the judgment.
Yeah, I'm just going to kind of repeat what you've said to make sure that we heard you correctly, Don. So an acreage average utility was around $600-700. It had ballooned and tripled to like $2,000 or $3,000, whatever 3x the amount is. So you went to RTRS for like how much money? And sorry, I didn't catch the part of what was the argument to win that hearing with RTRS, or how did you position that? Because it was fixed in the lease, correct?
Okay, you cut out there. How did I position it? Well, when I did my commentary, I pointed out in the lease where it said whatever amount it was, and then when I talked about the money, we did the rent first, and then I had a separate tenant ledger for the utilities, and I showed on the utilities where we deducted that $600 or $700, whatever it was, on the tenant ledger, and show it at the end. It showed the exact what they owed, and I mean, the adjudicator says, well, you agreed to this $400 or $700 or whatever it was, and so why should I make it more? And so, well, because these other factors included in here, they've got stolen property, and they did a bunch of damage to the outbuildings as well as the house, and fortified the doors and stuff like that. And so gotcha. That I said that I mean, if it was just an isolated thing for that, then we might have had a rough time. I mean, basically what it was is that they were doing more than what was expected. And that's what I went in. So it was expected that at this level, they live like a normal people, or people that were there before, or somewhere close to that, then that the bills would be in this range. But they didn't. So it'd be another example of that would be if somebody took an acreage and then put in growing plants of some sort, tomatoes or something,
a greenhouse,
hothouse, and it cost a lot of money to run that to get the plants to running. So it's a legitimate business. We go on two things. They probably shouldn't have had a business there, but certainly the utility costs, they would be your responsibility. The difference in what was in the lease and what actually happened, we would have a good argument on.
Okay. Awesome. So I'm just going to quickly summarize what you kind of put out there, Don. So in your situation on the acreage, you had a bunch of other breaches, poor behavior, damages, perhaps some illegal activity. And in light of that, they're ill intent, and then they probably pretty clearly could show that they intentionally ran up the utility bill that the TDO or tenancy dispute officer agreed on your side and awards you the arrears on the unpaid utilities, which you said was like $15,000 or $16,000. Did I hear that correctly?
I can't remember. It's probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
Yeah, but it was quite high for an eviction.
Okay, no, and that makes sense then. Rick, we're at the top of the hour. Actually, we're a little bit longer here, so we'll wrap it up here. But I just kind of want to touch point on what Rick said. He said, sorry, I should have mentioned it's a single family, 1 unit. So 1 set of utilities or 1 meter for 1 rental unit. This actually really warrants a good conversation, and something I've been kind of wanting to do is bringing in a panel of representatives from the major utility providers across Alberta and talking about, each provider has a very unique agreement they make you sign as a homeowner or a landlord that rents to a third party, and what happens on utilities when there's a default or unpaid utility bills, where those bills end up. It's handled differently with NMAX here in Calgary versus EPCOR up in Edmonton. I know for a fact the city of Airdrie will default any unpaid utilities to the person on title, which is not cool, but that's what they do. And there's some nuances in these legal contracts the utility providers make you sign. And there's probably some pro tips in there on how to position it well to not get stuck with a bunch of utility arrears. So Rick, let me take that away for you. You mentioned EPCOR, so I'm assuming you're up in Edmonton, but that will do some little bit of researching on my side. But let me see if I can swing some. That would be a pretty cool Shoptalk to have some utility representatives on the show with us. But anyways, we're long overdue here. Let's wrap up the show. Don, thank you for joining. I'm going to mute you, Don, because you've got some phone action and all that stuff in the background. Folks, if you don't know and you got questions, definitely reach out to Don. You're on mute right now too, Don. Don's with Edmonton Eviction Services. I believe his number, if you just Google Edmonton Eviction Services, all over the site. Don, if you got your phone number right now, you want to share it, go ahead and drop it out. 780-974-8427. Perfect.
And my email is don@edmontonevictionservices.com. So it's easy.
Love it. Thank you, Don. Yeah, a wealth of knowledge. I always like picking your brain and having these conversations. There's always something to be learned, tons of nuances to this business. So, folks, thanks for hopping on the first Shoptalk, all things landlording here on the Alberta Landlord Community. Our first show in 2024. Stay warm out there, and we'll catch you guys again. Our shows, I'll set out a post here. Don and I just agreed on our shop talks for the rest of the year. It's going to be the first and third Wednesday of every month, 7 to 8 p.m. Mountain Time, but we'll get that posted. I'll get them all pre-booked, and really they resolve around 2 things. We'll take kind of really challenging, popular posts on the Facebook group. We'll problem solve them as a group, help each other out, and of course, we're always tackling live Q&A as well. So we'll catch you guys on the next Shop Talk, and thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you kindly, sir.
Take care. Bye-bye.